everybody, Jason Bermas here for WeAreChange.org, and the highly anticipated trial of Jeffrey Epstein has been set. Yes, the convicted pedophile billionaire with ties to people like Bill Clinton, Kevin Spacey, and Prince Andrew will now have to answer to a civil court in the very near future. But before we get into all the details, I want to remind you guys that nobody else is bringing you this report. It's barely been mentioned in the mainstream media, let alone the alternative media, which is not covering this story. So please hit that join button. For only $4.99 a month, you support videos like this one and true independent journalism that is provided by WeAreChange. So now, after almost a decade of litigation leading up to this trial, billionaire Jeffrey Epstein will have the salacious details of the quote-unquote Lolita Express and, of course, his estate in the Virgin Islands scrutinized for the very first time. But wait, there are some major caveats to this. Number one, there is still a date set in September where the lawyers will mediate and possibly forego that trial. That being said, December 4th is the date when this trial is set to begin. But another kicker is the fact that Epstein himself, who was convicted, sentenced to 18 months, serving only 13 of those months, basically leaving jail almost every single day with an ankle bracelet and then coming back to sleep there, got what everybody has acknowledged is a sweetheart deal. Now, some have asked the question, did he get this sweetheart deal because he gave information to the FBI? Well, we certainly know that he did give information to the FBI. Whether or not that's why he got this deal is still up in the air. Epstein himself won't even show up to this trial. That means that the prosecution will have to go to the transcripts, the interviews, the information that has already been laid out in the criminal cases against Epstein. Now, there are some further complications to that, as well as the lead detective in the case actually passed away this May after a quote-unquote brief illness at the age of only 50 years old. Now, I'm not saying there's anything nefarious here, but it certainly makes it more difficult to try this case without the main lead detective being able to take the stand. Now, Epstein has been up to some rather interesting things recently. For instance, a lot of people have bought into the idea that Trump is somehow against Jeffrey Epstein and he's going to take him down, mainly due to the fact that he brought him up with Sean Hannity in relation to the Clintons on the run-up to the election.
Bill Clinton.
Nice guy. Got a lot of problems coming up, in my opinion, with the famous island with Jeffrey Epstein. A lot of problems.
And other supporters such as Donnie Deutsch also brought up Epstein.
Trump hits back. Tell me about the president's relationship with a guy named Jeffrey Epstein. That's your tennis match. And
what's that? What do you mean?
There's Jeffrey Epstein, who has been gone to jail for being with underage girls, boys, whatever it is, and Bill Clinton's a very good friend of his. Spent a lot of time with him, a lot of plane rides, and going to be a lot of questions about that. I'm just telling it like it is. That is the news story that is going to be the ultimate counterattack. Nobody wants to talk about it.
Many hoping that once Trump was in office, he would go after Epstein once again and his associates. But I can assure you folks, that is definitely not the case. We here at WeAreChange were some of the only people to cover the protesters in Minnesota who were kicked out of a Trump rally for showing a picture of Donald Trump and Jeffrey Epstein, who we have reported here definitely flew together on private jets. We have confirmed Trump took him on his own private jet and even alluded to being on Epstein's private jet. We have seen some other mainstream articles connecting Epstein to Trump. One in particular that I want to talk about is when they were talking about the infamous grab him by the you-know-what comment. They mentioned that Trump and Melania had been on the runway of one of their private jets and were waiting for Epstein and Giselle Maxwell, who is all in these lawsuits. You hear her name almost every time. And he commented to him, "You broke the cardinal rule, Jeffrey. You were late for someone else's plane." Now, obviously that insinuates not only was he about to ride on Trump's plane, but Trump had ridden on his plane as well. And he was certainly in that little black book. So maybe it should come as no surprise that just last week, Steve Bannon, still an ally of the Trump administration, actually met with Jeffrey Epstein. The question is, what could they have been talking about?
Let's start with the midterms. If they were held today, who do you think would win the House?
I think if they're held today, we'd have a tough time holding the House. I really do. I think it could be north of 25, maybe 30 seats, maybe north of that. There's people who are projecting today it could be 45 or 50 seats. I believe by November 6th, we're going to win this. I think all this takes is people on our side of the football focusing on what has to happen. This is an up or down vote on President Trump. You know, this election is going to come as a referendum on him.
Now, there's actually another lawsuit going on with Jeffrey Epstein that the media is refusing to cover. And that has to do with a man named Steve Hoffenberg. Now, Hoffenberg was convicted of the largest Ponzi scheme through his Towers Investors Group prior to Bernie Madoff. He was even sentenced to 20 years and served 18 of those years. This was a $475 million Ponzi scheme. And who was his right-hand man? Well, it was Jeffrey Epstein. And now Epstein is being sued by the shareholders with the cooperation of Stephen Hoffenberg. Now, it should also be noted that Stephen Hoffenberg gave $50 million of his own money to a Trump super PAC. So this again suggests that there are ties to Epstein and Trump that we have not explored yet in the alternative media or anywhere else for that matter. And it's pretty crazy to me that Hoffenberg could not only spend 18 years in prison, only pay about $200 million in restitution, claim that he is then broke, can't afford a $100,000 bond for his bail, and then somehow have $50 million for the Trump administration on the run-up to the presidential election.
It's Donald Trump. I simply run the super PAC. That's my job. I'm the CEO, treasurer of Get Our Jobs Back, Inc., which is certified by the Federal Election Commission in Washington, D.C., and we may be the largest super PAC for Donald Trump in the country.
All of these questions need to be explored. We have to find out what is exactly going on with Trump and Epstein. And we should also be looking at the fact that nobody is reporting on this large-scale lawsuit against Epstein, let alone the trial that will open up his prior activities with the solicitation of underage girls. As always, if you like this video, please share it on social media, hit that subscribe and notification button, and follow me on Twitter at Jason Bermas. And folks, be the change you want to see in the world.